My name is Ryan Floyd. This is Markus Zirn from Workato. He's the star of the show. I wanted to have Workato here because I think there's a lot of lessons and perspectives that they can offer. What we want to first talk about is, Workato's got an interesting story that I think a lot of folks here potentially have had to deal with, but, your companies maybe earlier. But a lot of companies in our portfolio have had to deal with this transition to AI. A lot of companies like Workato are really pre-GPT. In fact, Workato was founded in 2013. Markus joined in 2014. I didn't invest until 2017, end of 2016. But suffice to say, it was way before AI. And Workato got to some scale, about 200 million in ARR before even AI hit the scene. And so what I thought we'd explore first is how hard that pivot has been for Workato and some of the lessons that I think we can, take away. So, Markus, why don't you first maybe set the stage? Tell everybody a little bit about what Workato does, and then we can get into the pivot.
Maybe show of hands. Who knows Workato? Okay, so that's good. For the rest, I'll maybe tell you the story how we started Workato. We have Vijay, our CEO, also myself. We have a long background in integrations. So connecting the SaaS applications that you guys build. And then we saw Zapier. You guys probably know Zapier, right? And we were like, well, that looks really cool. And we said, we're going to build Zapier, but for enterprises. With everything that we knew about how enterprises use that. No, so not for individuals, but really for companies that need to connect all their application landscapes together. That's how we started. That was 2013. And really the mission was kind of like what Zapier also did, is like just make this less complicated, reduce complexity. Because I don't know if you guys know integration before, you needed developers. It was a big mess, how to integrate stuff, really, really complicated. So we wanted to simplify this. And so we did for...
Just on that, I remember when I invested, if you were buying MuleSoft, you would anticipate maybe spending a year with developers to get it up and running before you saw any value. And the whole point of Workato was very quick time to value, low code, no code, very easy to get running, but enterprise quality.
So we did a lot of work on the infrastructure, on the user interface, just to make everything like seamless and smooth and really easy. And then, we're getting to this AI pivot, right? What happened then the LLMs, ChatGPT, came about, and I won't forget, we had one of our technical guys played around. OpenAI had started getting these functions in the LLM, and he wired that with our integrations. He added a RAG architecture, and he said, Markus, watch this. And he took an English language requirement document, added it to the RAG architecture, and the AI agent would just do that workflow that before you had to define step by step. It would just do it. And we all looked at each other and we were like, oh shit. It's like maybe we worked for 10 years on something that you don't need to eat anymore right now. Yeah, so we worked like a decade on this, and then it's that whole vision of just making it simpler. The AI agent, the LLM, just made it so much easier so quickly. So we almost felt like we're almost like irrelevant. Like, we got to jump on this. And this is when we did this here, Burning Boats, we basically sat down and we're like, we got to change the company around. And mind you, you're talking about a company that's about, almost 1,200 employees all over the world, a couple $100 million in revenue. So this wasn't like pivoting after 6 months with 5 people. This was a big deal. But yeah, we did.
Hey, just to add to that, in Workato's case, AI was absolutely an existential threat. 100%. I think there's some businesses it's additive. In Workato's case, the reason we use burn the boats, and we talked about this as a board, it was because we knew if we didn't execute on transitioning to like an AI first strategy, we were going to be dead. And I think it's really important to understand too at the scale. So 200 million in revenue, 1,200 people worldwide. We had a good business. and then we had to make the transition.
The interesting thing is, what we had traditionally was replacing MuleSoft, replacing TipGo, replacing Boomi, the older kind of stuff. And that, as to Ryan's point, that actually was working fine, and it is actually still working fine. But we felt like long term we had to jump on a different boat. I mean, it's not just all bleak, all right? There were also some really good things about Gen AI. I mean, number one is we saw people doing workflows and process automations that the value was much bigger than before. Like people would like classify and auto read emails and then route them through system, things that you couldn't even automate before people did. I mean, like super valuable customer support and so on. And then last but not least, Workato was always, I don't know about you guys, but from a business motion perspective, we weren't blessed. We always had very few leads. Integration is one of those things that most people don't care about in a company. You had to find the right people. There weren't that many, and then you had to hold on to them and convert them. I mean, we did quite well with the conversion, but it wasn't like this huge top funnel where we got like thousands and thousands of leads and we had to funnel it down. For us, it looked more like a silo. There were like a few that came in, and then we just made sure we converted them. And with Gen AI, that actually changed. All of a sudden, everyone wanted to talk about it. We got a lot more leads.
So I think the big lesson from that is, regardless of your scale, regardless of what you're doing, I think it's a burn the boat moment for virtually every company in SaaS. And you really got to make AI really that part of your business that's really what you're leading with. For however hard that is to do and painful and what it means in terms of change, I can't emphasize enough how important that is, at least how I see it as an investor, and certainly what you're hearing, from Workato in terms of what it's meant for their customers, whether it's driving leads, better product, more competitive, and so forth. The other, I think, to just transition the other aspect we really want to talk about Workato is around the enterprise. The enterprise, I think, is something that every software business, AI business ought to try to aspire to, because you get these big ACVs, right? You get less churn, but there's really no free lunch. In the enterprise, it's a lot harder to sell to. And so we thought we'd give you a couple of lessons learned there from the time of Workato as well, because Workato started out as a product-led growth motion that was more of a commercial kind of use case and has gradually moved much more into the enterprise. So maybe, Markus, you can...
And maybe also show of hands, how many of you guys are selling to enterprise customers, like large enterprises? Okay, also about half. How many of you guys want to sell to large enterprises? All right. So here's the thing. It's as Ryan said, it's there's no free lunch. Selling to the enterprises gets you bigger deals and less churn, 100%. I mean, I talked about Zapier, right? I mean, you guys know Zapier. So I recently, just a couple weeks back, we both Zapier and Workato on the cloud the Forbes Cloud 100 list. And so we met, Wade, who's the CEO, and we met at this event, and we started chatting and kind of talking about the last 10 years. And he says, Markus, the one thing I admire about you guys, Workato, is you really went all in with the enterprise, and I wish I had done this earlier. So I think it is, when you get big at a certain point, you almost have to sell to the enterprise because it gets so harder to grow with the small.
When you think about going all in the enterprise, tell everybody, like, in your mind, what did that mean at Workato?
All right. So I mean, just to set the stage, the enterprise, the way I think about it always is, people in the enterprise are not paid to make the best decision. They're paid to not make a mistake. Okay, I think that's probably the way to think about it. And then it gets worse because they got lots of people. And to make a decision, it's not one person who makes a decision, but there's like maybe 10 people who all don't want to make a mistake. And then you get where this is going, right? I mean, it's tough. I mean, you're basically pushing that big rock up the mountain. So what do you have? So what you get out of all of this, you get a lot of red tape. that people put in front of you, and you have to invest. You have to invest in security from a product perspective. You have to invest in governance. You kind of have to feel out a little bit, what do they need and what will make them feel like they don't make a mistake. I think that's the way I would think about it.
Yeah, and I think, with that enterprise comes so much friction, not only in terms of selling, but I think also like the feature sets that you have to be able to deliver against, the governance, the security, and so forth, the edge cases that a lot of these enterprises want to have, data sovereignty, all of that. It's a lot. But if you get there, yeah, you get the benefit of lower churn, much bigger ACVs, and I think ultimately an easier way to build a business. At Storm, when we look at a lot of companies, we think about the ACVs and that ability to sell. If you're selling a product that costs 10, 20K, and you're trying to do a direct sales motion, for example, that's a very hard business to build, right? Because of the salespeople you have to hire and the velocity you have to make that happen. It's not to say you can't do it, but it's challenging. But if you can get to a point where you've got a product with the full-scale features, with a solution that really addresses that issue in the enterprise, you can really make a direct sales model work. So maybe that's a good segue into talking about sort of the developer motion. So this is kind of, I think, the last big pivot, probably not the last pivot, but, in terms of the life of Workato that we've really changed. When we started, we didn't have a developer motion. When we started, we walked in fact, as I mentioned, with like MuleSoft, the whole value proposition was you don't need developers because you can just get up and running. It was almost anti-developer. Marcus and I were just talking about that earlier before. It was almost anti-developer, which just sounds crazy to say today. But we've really now built in a developer motion really to make it easier for other people to gain access to that enterprise and that sort of agentic platform that Workato has. So maybe you can talk about, how that's evolved over time. Just another example of kind of a pivot in the business.
So for Workato, in our history, again, we started 2013. We're cloud native. I mean, for SaaS, I think that's understood, right? I mean, why would you do anything different? But for integration, for our business, you'd be surprised. There's actually MuleSoft and Boomi and all of these, they're still on-premise. And a lot of the big enterprises really wouldn't even talk to us. We would always get into the last three in an evaluation, and then they said, oh, you don't do this on-premise? And they're like, yeah, we need it on-premise. It really unlocked with Corona, with COVID. When COVID happened, boom, the walls fell. But what we needed in between to grow, we needed larger deals. And so we said, hey, if we sell to IT organization, why can't we also sell them embedded into the product to help application companies do their integrations? And it worked. It worked. I mean, Workato is also that kind of, because we honed so much on the experience and making it simpler, that when product organization tried it, when they test drove it, large enterprises, you got to do some magic to get them to test drive, but product organizations, they like to test drive. And once they got test drove Workato, they're like, yeah, totally, that makes sense. So it kind of bridged our revenue from selling to mid-sized companies then to be ready to sell to large enterprises. And we almost like used it as a preparation step, if that makes sense. We would specifically talk to ISVs or applications that would want to sell to enterprises or would have larger enterprises as end customers. And so we build out these functions. It would work for the ISVs. It would prepare us for the larger customers. And it was a win-win.
Just a couple of the examples, like Autodesk, or we're talking about like Health First.
So Autodesk, I mean, you guys probably know Autodesk, CAD software used in construction. All their integrations are done with Workato. What's another one? Reich, project management software, all their integrations done with Workato. Maybe one that you know less so, Epicor, is like an old ERP system. They did everything, but pretty good size, $1 billion business, everything done with Workato. And the value proposition was really, okay, if you tried to build integration, you tried it on your own, and then someone comes in and you realize how hard that actually is. And then someone comes in and says, like, for about the equivalent of 1 or 2 developers, I can just offer the whole thing with all the connectors to all applications, and customers then build the integrations themselves. They go like, yeah, of course, we would do that. So it's a little bit, I don't know if you guys ever felt that. I don't know if anyone of you tried to build integrations yourself and realized how hard it is. The person who runs this embedded business for us, he would always say, like, Markus, I only sell to people who tried before and failed. The other ones, I'll just tell them to come back in 2 years. But, when you do that and when your product people see that, I think it's just a complete no-brainer.
So maybe it's just a final point, like as a takeaway. We wanted to offer to everybody here at the show. Workato has this agentic platform now that makes it much easier for any AI business to really extend into the enterprise, where it's your application, it's your customer facing, and you should take advantage now of the developer motion that we have, the integration motion we have, and to the extent someone builds something here, that's great. I've got my contact stuff there at the bottom. Please tell me what you've built. I'll make sure that you get visibility within the Workato ecosystem. We'll send you some swag. I'd love to hear what you're capable of building and what you think of the platform. So thank you, everybody.